Hey, what's up? I am excited to jump into this interview, do another How to Create Wealth conversation, and wanting to invite different friends and colleagues and industry leaders in different spaces. And so I'm excited to jump on this call with my friend, Andre Johnson.
How you doing?
He's a coach, he's an entrepreneur, he's a husband, he's a father. He is a pastor and a great friend. And so, Andre, thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, Pastor Sam. Thanks for having me.
Well, hey, I wanted to get into a few different topics here, and I think, yeah, your world as a coach in athletics for so many years, your world as an entrepreneur. There's just a lot of different spaces that I think you're able to really speak into that are going to help strengthen us, stir us up, give us tenacity. I
Yes.
think one of those things, that grit, right? To
Yep.
not quit, to stay strong, to keep pushing through. I know earlier we were talking about some mindset stuff that I think will be super valuable for us to kind of lean into, because it feels like so much of our ability to thrive, so much of our ability to increase, to create wealth, to step into new seasons of prosperity is not just, skill set. It's not just who you know. It's not just, upbringing or lack of. It's how am I thinking about these
Yes.
things? What does God's word say about these situations versus maybe myself or my upbringing or whatever the case might be? So I'm excited to jump into that. Let's get a little backstory. Let's get a little
Yeah.
intro on Andre Johnson, Pastor Andre here. What's your background in the sense of wealth? Did you come from wealth? Did you come, which side of the tracks did you come from? Stories that YouTube won't kick us off for, if you could
Right.
share those.
Or there won't be any RICO charges. So yeah, I'm from the inner city of Chicago. So when we talk about RICO, we're actually talking about federal charges, not a Latino neighbor down the road. Uh, so where I grew up, I was born to my mom and dad. My mom, the Christmas break of my mom's 8th grade year, my dad's 9th grade year. I was pretty much raised in the inner city of Chicago, the gang violence, kind of just thought this is just normal. Like, that's what I think the hardest part I had a pastor really help me with. I spent a lot of time defending my upbringing and background because people would say bad and good, and I never thought of my upbringing as bad. My upbringing was just not kingdom, right? Is it kingdom based or not kingdom based? No, it's not. It's just not kingdom based. So there's no point in getting into a defense of, hey, we weren't that bad or we weren't this bad or that. No, at the end of the day, we just weren't building kingdom. So if you're not building the God's kingdom, you know what you're working towards. So once I got that revelation, it really gave me some peace over, hey, I walked through some stuff just like a lot of people in and out of the Bible, but that's how I got here. That ability to process pain, disappointment, not getting your way, all of those things. The difference was the biggest mindset shift I had to make was it's not happening to me, it's happening because of me, right? And one of the things I think I told you, Pastor Sam, I used to teach, and I used to always laugh because every kid that got a D or an F would all be like, oh, Coach Dre, you gave me a D. You gave me an F. Like, I gave it to him. It had nothing to do with it. But almost 100% of the time, my best student or the kids that got A's were like, I got an A. I got an A in Coach Dre's class, because look at the difference. They're taking ownership and receiving. I got this. I earned this. I achieved this. Versus the negative was, oh, it was given to me and I had no choice. Like, I didn't miss on their homework. I didn't tell them not to take the quiz. I didn't do any of that. And unfortunately, especially in the poorer communities, you're celebrated in a way of struggle. And one of the things I've had to fight even in my own life with some of my family members is the church. There's a lot of churches out there that wouldn't do what you're doing, Pastor Sam. They'd be like, hey, this is blasphemy, but Jesus was poor. It's hard to get a rich man through the eye of a needle and all of that nonsense. And so you couple the fact that not only do I lose my culture by creating wealth, I actually lose my salvation. Oh man, I'm just going to stay poor. What am I doing? Why would I ever want anything? I got to take it. It'd be easy to be like, hey, God's got it. And the government, I got the 2 G's. I got the God and government. That's who's taking care of me. I'm going to sit here in the projects and just wait for somebody to pay me and somebody to pay for me. And I'm like, hey, man, you can pray for yourself, but you can pay for yourself. So what are you waiting for?
Yeah, one of the things I love, Pastor Andre, that you're saying about taking ownership, I got an A versus you gave me the
Yes.
F. It's so easy to kind of live in that space, and even I mean, of course, we could say that in a big picture sense, where there's a lot of people who kind of have a victim mentality around the government or so and so or this boss or my parents or a teacher or coach, whatever the case might be. But also, we can do that unintentionally with God. I know I found myself in that space where I was like, all right, I'm going to work hard. So I'm applying certain principles biblically. But I had this unintentional thing with God where it's sort of like, all right, okay, God, I'm gonna work hard. And, if you want to bless me, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for it.
Right.
And it wasn't until I really took ownership of what God had given me, understood, man, God's word says he gave us the power to create wealth. That means I need to create it. That means I need to take ownership. That means I need to apply these principles. The parable of the talents, God, gave resource, but they had to multiply. They couldn't just sit on it.
Yep.
So I think I love that principle of really that mindset of ownership and taking responsibility for it versus pushing off that expectation onto somebody else or thinking somebody else is responsible ultimately for me rising or falling. So um, for you, what kind of, like you said, from growing up in that environment to then ultimately you're you were at Merrill Lynch.
Yep.
I mean, like, that was quite a journey, right? I mean, I'm fast
Yeah, I've been
forwarding.
at Wells Fargo and Merrill Lynch. Yep.
And so what was that journey for you coming from where you were, right, to having to learn to think differently, having to step into a different environments and ultimately thriving in finance, thriving in business? I mean, I'm sure this could be a 10-hour conversation. But what were some of those things for you that helped you learn to think different, rise above, kind of maybe what could have easily been a statistic to really stepping into success?
I think the first step was realizing it's up to me. Like with a team I played for, were a really good team, and they used to the defensive model was if it's going to be, it's up to me.
Mm,
Right? I want every play to come my way. I dare you to come to my spot, and just that mentality of like, I don't have to wait for the guy to the left or the right of me. I control my own destiny. This is my part of the turf. This is my part of the earth. Like you own this part of this earth for the next 12 seconds, period. And you just literally extrapolated that out. Like, okay, I could blame somebody else for this high school thing or say, oh, I'm black. I'm supposed to do bad on the SAT. Or I could be like, oh, wait, these guys are taking the test. They're doing it this way. They're right next to me. I could get a perfect SAT due. So I did. Right. So then it translates to school, translates to how do I attack everything. And one of the biggest two fallacies that I want to address with that on that climb is this whole notion of it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this
mm,
notion of it takes money to make money. Well, yes and no. At the end of the day, it's not who you know. There's a comma there that they're missing. It's what do they think of you? So I know
mm,
a lot of people, but I don't think very highly of them, right? I know a lot of people I think very highly of. And the notion of it takes money to make money is almost like that gives you an excuse not to, because, oh, I don't have any, so I can't make any more. Well, the
right.
reality is the people that make money off money are called traders. That's what I did. I was a trader. You don't want to deal with me. The guys that are really created, it takes money to create an asset to make money. Well, guess what? You can create asset with right here. This is my best asset right between my ears. And so if
Yeah.
I can apply that asset to drive, how do I drive it towards wealth creation? Well, now I'm on Wall Street. Now I'm competing. Now there's a scoreboard that matters. Now at the end of the day, can I create value for this person? If I can create value for this person, they're going to pay me for it. And I'm going to be
Right.
able to transfer that wealth to my family, to my kingdom building, to everything else, right? It's really my old boss at Wells Fargo had the funniest phrase like, sales is easy. All you got to do is convince the guy that the money in his pocket is better than yours.
That's easy.
It's easy, no problem. so, so it was pretty funny, but that whole mentality of how do you go get things done? How do you apply? The parable of talents is a great example of people that are given similar opportunities. And the one thing that's funny about the parable of talent to me is that the guy that got 5 and the guy that got 2 went and recreated it, and the person that got 1, well, is that did the master already know? The master already knew I probably shouldn't give this guy 5. Somebody, that's the part of the story they don't tell you, is like, how did he pick 1, 2, and 5? My guess is he had some discernment there and probably wasn't that surprised that the guy he gave 1 to gave it back to him. You know, so
wow. That's
do you want to be the 5 talent guy or the 1 talent guy? So at the end of the day, those opportunities are presented, and there's like, well, opportunity knocks, and I'm like, opportunity doesn't have to knock because I'm always chasing it.
Yeah.
Opportunities just trying to figure out how to get away from me because I keep chasing them down every chance I get, and trying to figure out how to go get it and take more and more and more and teach other people the same thing.
Well, and I think I really like that principle you brought up about the parable of the talents, which I absolutely agree. I don't think you hear anybody talk about that too much, that there's a reason why. I mean, certainly you could draw that parallel of just initial hardwiring. How did God make us? Okay, there's maybe certain gifts I have, certain gifts somebody else has. So you could draw that as like an innate from birth 1 to 5 talent person. But we also know that there is the other element of whatever I do with what I have is going to start showcasing whether or not people start trusting me with more or less. And obviously the 2 talent guy ended as a 4 talent guy in the parable.
That's right.
Move beyond. So that reputation that we create has, I mean, and Proverbs talks so much about reputation. It's more valuable than gold. It's what we have that nobody can take away from us. Is how do people perceive me? Do people know my reputation? Am I known to be a hard worker? Am I known to have integrity? Am I known, right? That was one of the things my dad taught me. My dad came from poverty in the West St. Paul of Minnesota, which we both kind of grew up in that Midwest area. And my dad rose up out of that into a place of prominence in the sense of like, he started getting known around Minneapolis. Hey, if you want to get this construction job done, let George do it. That became like a slogan. Let George do it. That's my dad. Because he did it well. Sometimes he'd redo it at his own expense if a customer didn't like it, right? He's going to go above and beyond, create that good experience. Because of that, he's been busy for decades and turning work down. You know what I mean? Now he's trying to turn it over to one of my brothers and move into a new season because he's got to turn so many people down, and that's because of reputation. So I think you were alluding to that earlier. It's not just who you know, but it's what do they think about you? Like, what is the reputation you have with people? Talk a little bit more about that, maybe, of like working with people, creating reputation, that kind of relational equity.
Well, I think, and part of it, and I think the kids call it this day branding, right? It's what's my brand? What do I represent? And I remember I took a class at Wharton, and it's like, what's the first adjective you think of when you think of this person? And then on the other side, when you start naming things like powerhouse, name 3 people that you think of when you think of the word powerhouse. Brilliant. Who do you think of? Like those, how do you get yourself and your name attached to those powerful adjectives and descriptions so that when somebody says, he's brilliant, he's a champion, he's a powerhouse, he's a kingdom maker. It's like, but then what happens, and this is really important, because when something shows up incongruent with that, it immediately stands out. I tell people all the time, great culture reveals bad behavior immediately. The minute you're like, wait, that's not normal. So just like a great reputation, if I have a great reputation and somebody starts talking, well, that Pastor Samuel guy, he doesn't, he doesn't do this. The guy never follows through. He never does it. He's like, what, Pastor Samuel? You can't be talking about the Pastor Samuel I know. Pastor Samuel I know is this, that. What are you talking about? So your reputation is actually your reputation's probably the best armor bearer you have in your life.
Yeah, it's so good.
Because the reality is that's what's going to keep you. And the people I'm not going to I wouldn't even entertain that conversation because I already know this guy's reputation. It might not even get to you. You have no idea how many fights, arguments, and wars you won just because your reputation was so superior to what the nonsense and the noise, because the minute you go higher, somebody wants to bring you back down. Nobody, like, it's very difficult to climb because there's too many people that, oh, why did you get to do that? Well, because they don't believe that they can, especially in some of the communities I come from. It's like, well, yeah, well, they got that. Well, they had this. Well, they had this. It's like, but did we though? Because we were all in the same third grade class together. At the end of the day, we learned multiplication tables together. The fact that I took it all the way to calculus 2, maybe you could have too. Like, I don't know. You decided not to, but that's not my fault, right? So I think as people, and what's hard about it is that's why it's so easy to crack. It's so powerful. It just takes that one breach of trust. It just takes that one thing to break it down. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, what happened? I got to re-put it together, because now when that attack comes, guess what? It has a little validity to it. Like, oh yeah, that's what you say, but did you hear about this? They're like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know that. I didn't know. Okay, now I got to, maybe that chink in the armor or whatever you want to call it, is just changed a little bit. And that's why that reputation, that's why, power of prayer. You pray for discernment, have discipleship, have people look at your blind spots, have people in your life that can speak into you in many different areas. And one of the things, I have different people I talk to about different things, because I don't necessarily have to go to one person to make sure I go subject matter expert. I love the fruit you're doing. I love the things I hear about you. So I'm going to ask you. That helps. I think they call it Yelp.
Well, I think that's a great point too, in the sense of when we are choosing inputs and coaching in whatever range, don't just go to the same person unless there's fruit in their life about a certain area. So if I'm thinking about finance, if I'm thinking about real estate, if I'm thinking about investing, if I'm thinking about family, if I'm thinking about marriage, I need to ask myself, am I getting the same inputs from the same broken circle? You know what I mean? About things, like the whole crab pot thing, right? Like everyone's pulling each other down versus celebrating each other's wins. I mean, it really doesn't matter kind of what background you come from. There's a lot of there's an insecurity part of us that when somebody's winning, there's part of you that wants to go, yay, and part of you that wants to be like, shoot, like, well, what about me? Why didn't I, there's a human error element, I think, a lot of times in us, where we can, if we're not careful, instead of cheering each other on, knowing that, hey, if you're winning and I'm your friend, eventually I'm going to start winning. You know what I mean? And vice versa, we can have a tendency to kind of disparage each other's successful moments versus cheering each other on. So I think that's a great reminder to look for people who are winning and surround yourself with them. Don't shy away from people who are successful because you feel intimidated. But that can be an instinct. It would be the same thing in sports. I remember from a young age going, hey, don't just play people you can beat all the time. If you compete, you got to compete with people who are going to kind of embarrass you a little bit. Someone who's going to pull a move on you that you weren't ready for. Like, you need those intense moments to actually sharpen you.
Yeah, I think it's funny you say that, because I coached and played football and wrestling, and I say the transition in the marketplace from being a football player to a wrestler. A football player needs the other 10 guys to do the right thing so they can be successful. The reality is, in a wrestling team, I only wrestle my class against my guy. Now, I'm part of this team, but I can be an undefeated state championship wrestler on a terrible team. There's no, I could be the 30-0 guy on a team that's never won a meet, but at the end of the day, I'm responsible for my circle, my battle, my war, and I can celebrate the guy the mat over. He's wearing the same singlet I am, same school I am, doing the same sport I am. Him winning or losing over there doesn't affect me, but our whole team gets better. So now when they see Poway wrestling, they're like, oh, Poway, they're really good. Look out. Those guys have, you're wrestling a guy from Poway? Oh, man, good luck. Oh, you're working with a guy from Awaken? Oh, wow, that's awesome. Oh, you're working with a guy that was discipled by Samuel Deuth? Oh, you're going to be great. Like, those things help you. That's why there's an old saying on Wall Street, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. Right? Yeah. Hey, what'd you do? I bought IBM. Oh, well, it didn't work. Well, it would have never worked then. If IBM couldn't figure it out, nobody can. Right now, that's a little dated nowadays. They probably say Google or Amazon, but
Sure,
in my
sure.
days, we talked about IBM. But it's that same mentality of, yes, those guys are winning, but that doesn't mean you had to lose, right?
Right.
This isn't football anymore. He
Yeah.
missed his block and you got sacked. Okay, I get it. That's not what's happening. You're on your mat and you're battling, by the way, really important, in your weight class.
Sure. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
don't jump with a heavyweight mat when you're still a lightweight. You're 120 pounds, man. What are you over here? We're 300. We're 280. Do you really want to come wrestle the 280? You like but that guy's the best. It's like, yeah, but he's 300 pounds. Like you're
Right.
not the same. Let him. It goes back to ball. Run your race, right? Run the race you've been given. And
Yeah.
by the way, here's the thing. And I use my wrestling analogy. Guess what? Your gold medal for the 50-kilo weight class looks exactly the same as the 100-kilo guy. It's
Yeah.
no different. It's the same gold medal, man. A win's a
Okay.
win's a win's a win. Don't get caught up in classes. Don't get caught up in reputation.
Yep.
Don't get caught up in, oh, I started here, I started there. It's like, that's irrelevant. That's
Yeah.
really honestly irrelevant because
Yeah.
you're never going to finish where you started unless you don't move. So are you
Yeah.
moving forward? You moving backwards? Are you staying in the same place, just dodging every opportunity, every problem, watching
Yep.
people pass you by, and going, "Oh man, how did that happen?" My grandma used to say something really funny. She said, "Don't get rich first or last." And I never really understood that until I got out, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, because you're first, everybody's trying to take it. If you're last, it's too late. They already passed you."
Oh, that's funny. Um, that it almost sounds like the old Talladega Nights. If you ain't first, you're last.
That's right, exactly. Ricky Bobby.
um, one of the things that um, I'd love to have you speak into. Obviously, you were in Wall Street, you with Wells Fargo, with Merrill Lynch. You've done a range as a family, and you and your beautiful wife and your family. First of all, your kids are dominating in football as well, just as you do, which is awesome. So it's fun to see family success. I think a lot of times, when we're talking earlier about fruit, who are the kind of people I want to hear from? It's
Yes.
not just the fact that Andre has achieved certain levels in business. It's that, you're married and you're still married and you're in love. It's that you got great kids that love God and are thriving. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
all of those things, like you're talking about reputation, speak highly of you. But let's talk a little bit about maybe just investment strategies, maybe different assets that you would focus on. When you're talking to somebody who's kind of wanting to grow financially, wanting to level
Yes.
up, wanting to think long term for my family, how do I begin to build wherever they're at? What would maybe be some things you would lean in and encourage people as they're trying to kind of level up their game and wealth creation? Are there some kind of foundational things that you really kind of encourage as people are starting off, or maybe kind of getting going to build?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think my 18-year-old, well, now he's 19, but basically he followed the model exactly how I told him. It's like at the end of the day, most people call investments, really they're just buying assets that are going to depreciate, right? At the end, if you have more money and assets that go down than you do than go up, you've got a problem. What do I mean by that? I got a $60,000 GMC truck loan that I'm paying $800 a month to pay at some rate, and then by the time I get that asset back, it's going to be worth less, guaranteed. Promise you. What if I
Right.
took that same $800 and every day, every month, invested into my own personal Roth IRA or my own tax deferred vehicle, whatever that is, and just drive a different car? And
Yeah.
now at the end of that same term, I have all of the money plus the interest and the assets that actually appreciated. And I don't have to exchange it. So if you're in an apartment and your apartment and your rent and your car payment are more than you make, that's backward. Did you pay yourself first? The concept of paying yourself first. I'm going to tithe, I'm going to give, and I'm going to invest and save and invest. And don't choose debt acquisition is not saving. Now, there's a time for debt. If you have a large asset that you're trying to acquire that's going to appreciate a house, a business, a building, a company. Okay, yeah, I will take on debt for that because what I borrowed to get it, I expect a higher return. If I
Right.
borrow to acquire something that's guaranteed to go down, you're probably on the wrong side of that trade. Right. Now, I'm not saying for everybody, but if you're first starting out, first things first, what are you paying? What assets are you paying right now every month that you're guaranteed are going down versus the things that you know are going to go up? Are you paying yourself? Did you max out your company's 401k? Did you max out your Roth IRA? Have you done all the tax deferred things? Do you understand that all of these things happen first? But people call, oh, what's my best stock I can pick? I'm like, did you max out your Roth IRA? They're like, no. You max out your 401k? I'm like, they're like, no. You're not ready to pick individual stocks. You're not there yet. Now, if you want to have some play money, like, oh, I can pick Apple over Google. I mean, if you look at the markets recently, in the last few days, there's a ton of money made. Me and my son did really well. Our portfolios were up 13%. The market was down 30 because we understand things and how to move things around, and you see things coming. But the very, very basic level, assets should grow. Borrow money to buy assets that grow. Do not spend money. You're not really creating those things. And the other thing I would say that's really, really important is start early. Like, don't wait. Oh, when I make money, I'll start saving. No, start saving now. And my general rule of thumb with my kids, I raise my house is if you get paid twice a month, one paycheck should pay all your bills. That one paycheck should pay all your bills. If you have to dip in that second paycheck just to maintain your lifestyle, you're overspending. Your life, you got champagne wishes and beer budget. Like somebody missed a decimal, a comma. I don't know what happened. What are you talking about? If you got an $800 lease payment, you're living at your mama's house. No, we can't do that. No, we're not doing that, right? So it's one of those things, and it's kids catch more than get caught more than gets taught. So I thought it was funny. I think I preached it from stage. My son comes to me on his 18th birthday. He's like, "Oh, I need to sign here for my Roth IRA. I have all the money saved. I'm just transferring it to my account." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I've saved all the money. I was just waiting to turn 18 so I could open the account." I was like, "Okay, I don't remember even teaching you that." He's like, "You didn't, but you talk about it all the time." So I did my own research and I opened an account at Schwab. I'm like, "Why'd you pick Schwab?" "Well, they have this, they have this, they have that." He had done all the research. He'd figured it all out from just understanding this. When he got his stipend from playing college football, more than half that money gets put away back into his investments. He only lives off half the money. I don't need that money. I don't need that other stuff. So that's and what's hard about it is we live in a world of instant gratification, right? It's hard to understand that, it might take a while. Like when you go to Asia countries, you explain to them how like our mortgage system works. They look at you like you're the crazy. Like, wait, you're going to give me, so you want $1 million house and you give them 30 grand and you pay them the next 30 years. That's by the time you end up paying, you paid $3 million for the house. They don't even understand why would you do that? Just wait to have the $1 million or buy something smaller. Like they don't even understand the concept of that. And so it's really funny how wealth is created worldwide and how things look at it. But for the basic starting people, hey, if you're going to borrow, make sure you're borrowing to buy something that grows. And if your paycheck is not paying, one paycheck doesn't pay all your bills, you need to really look at what you can cut back.
That is amazing. That such great insight, and I love seeing that, just showcasing how you're now passing it on to your kids. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they're implementing this stuff, they're seeing the fruit of that in their own life right now. And what a great thing. I mean, all of us maybe at different stages, personally, what we can sort of provide for our kids or not. I know we all would want to provide really well. Some of us can, some of us can't at whatever stage we're at. But we can all begin to teach these principles at a young age to our kids. And like you said, start now. Having our kids begin now. We have different, savings accounts, high yield savings accounts for our kids that we're putting in consistently, helping them understand these basic principles so they can actually see it grow and see it appreciate, versus it always just be the instant kind of gratification, like you said, which, it's why America's in such extreme credit card debt. extreme debt in every way because we're not really applying some of these principles.
Well, I always laugh because tell people I learned most of my wealth creation while I was still on food stamps.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that I just didn't have the capital to apply these principles to, right? I knew the model. I mean, we got the little spin, save, give, piggy bank like everybody else did, but I didn't understand it until I was like, oh, wait, this actually makes sense. I see how much debt hurts you or how much the acquisition of the shoe, like going up in the hood, first of the month, everybody's got money. The fourth of the month, everybody's broke already because they spent it so fast. It's already gone. It's like, well, I was waiting till you gotta wait for my check to come. I gotta wait. I was like, how you got all that money? What happened? It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting. It learns early, and I tell people if you don't have, you said it best, Pastor Sam. If you don't have the resources, you still have knowledge. You still have access to knowledge. Wisdom screams from the rooftops, right? Like I'm sitting here screaming at you, telling you how to do this, and you're just choosing. Well, I don't have any money now. Well, your kid doesn't have to live that way. My dad
Yeah.
can't believe the lifestyle we live. He's still amazed that I don't even know how you did that, son. I had nothing to do with that. He tells me all the time, I had nothing to do with that boy. That boy, I don't know how I didn't teach him any of that stuff. He did everything I told him not to do. He's like, I swear, he said at my wedding, it was so funny. He's like, my son never told me no, but he was really good at saying no without moving his head. He just didn't do it. Luckily for everybody in this room, he just didn't do what I said.
That's funny. That's saying no without moving your head.
But what he didn't understand is he taught me the power of work. He taught me the power of sacrifice. He taught me the power of it doesn't always go your way. Who cares? So what?
Yeah.
Now what? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, this happened. So what? Now what? Like, let's keep it pushing, keep moving. It's not going to always be a great day, but it doesn't mean you can't be a great tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Pastor Andre, thank you so much.
Thank you,
This
man.
is absolute gold.